Generally calm people of Reddit, what made you lose your absolute mind that time? Story 1. My brother and I had a blast playing travel sports, but one trip was particularly memorable. We were at the pool with some of his teammates when the coach's son, who was notorious for being a bully, decided to pick up my brother's drink and spit into it. I was furious at this mistreatment of my brother, so I ran and shoulder checked him into the pool, clothes, phone, and iPod included. He ran out of the pool crying and yelling about how he was going to tell his dad. Little did he know, all the other kids stuck up for my brother, and the coach was not happy to find out what his son had done. I felt proud to have defended my brother and stood up to the bully. Story 2. I was absolutely livid when my patient's pre-authorization for surgery for a large grapefruit-sized pelvic mass was denied by BCBS. After doing a peer-to-peer review, the doctor working for the insurance company suggested that I have a psychiatrist rule out mental causes of her pain first. I was so enraged that I had to walk away for 30 minutes before seeing another patient, as one more comment could have potentially provoked me to act out in violence. Story 3. Growing up on a farm, I had a memorable experience when several of the cows decided to test if their heads fit through a small gate hole. And they did. Of course, this resulted in the gate being broken, a cow getting stuck in it, and the rest of the cows escaping into a nearby field. I was utterly shocked and dismayed at this development. Story 4. This girl had been tormenting me at school for weeks. She spread malicious rumors about my dad being gay, and even the foreign exchange students heard about it. She was constantly throwing paper at me in class while also making cruel taunts. But it all came to a head one day in history class. She was sitting behind me and started kicking me through the hole in the back of my chair. I asked her to stop, but she kept going. So in a fit of frustration, I turned around and jabbed her in the leg with a pencil. Thankfully, it didn't draw blood, but it was enough to get her to leave me alone. I was sent to detention, but I was relieved to be left in peace. Story 5. I was manning the return desk at a retail store when a woman came in with 2 full totes of clearance items. She wanted to buy them all again since the price had dropped. I tried to explain why that was against the rules, but she managed to get a manager to cave in. I was already feeling frustrated as the transaction was likely to take at least 30 minutes. Suddenly, I heard a commotion and glanced over to see the woman's 5 unsupervised children jumping on a flat cart and pushing it around. I was so enraged that I yelled at them. My first and last time raising my voice throughout my 10-year tenure. The entire store fell into silence, and the customer was so shocked at her children that she quickly took her items and left. My coworkers later mentioned that seeing me get angry was quite unnerving. I guess being the quiet one was a blessing and a curse. Story 6. My friend and I were walking home from high school. It was a sweltering hot day during our sophomore year. He kept messing with me, lightly tripping me the whole way home, and I kept asking him to stop, but he kept going. I guess all the other bullying I'd experienced in school had just built up to that point. When we were close to our separate homes, one last trip was all it took for me to snap. I swung my backpack at him, full of heavy textbooks and a lunch bag. He was carrying a balsa wood bridge that he had to finish for a class, and when I swung my bag, it sent the bridge flying. I ran towards him, but then I noticed his scattered work and the broken bridge and decided to take action. I grabbed my bag, turned and walked, not even glancing back at him as he stared at his bridge in shock, saying, "You broke my bridge." I replied with something along the lines of, "I don't give a damn," and I never heard from him again. Story 7. When my dad was hospitalized after having a stroke at the age of 14, a kid in my school kept spouting off about how my dad was going to die and that he deserved it. I tried to ignore him, but at lunchtime, he cornered me and I snapped. I don't remember what happened, but it took 3 adults to restrain me from the tiny 14-year-old 100-pound kid. I regret nothing, and he never bothered me again. Story 8. At the dinner table one evening, I was eagerly awaiting my mom's burrito. I have a deep appreciation for well-crafted sandwiches, and I knew this was going to be a good one. My older brother, however, had other plans. His mischievous grin let me know what he was up to as he slowly reached out and smashed the burrito with his finger. I was furious, and he knew it. He took it one step further and open-palmed it, turning it into a gooey, sloppy mess. And that was the last straw. Without thinking, I picked up the burrito and threw it at him. It missed, hitting the wall instead. Just then, my parents walked in. They were shocked, but instead of punishing me, they asked my brother what he had done to deserve such a response. That was when I knew it was okay to stand up for myself, and I will never forget that moment. Unfortunately, my mom didn't serve burritos that night, but the memory still remains. Story 9. At the time, I was a 14-year-old girl who usually kept to herself and was respectful. My mom had recently been diagnosed with breast cancer and was about to go through a difficult 6-month treatment. One day, my dad came by our house for some reason. My parents are divorced. As it was not unusual, he got angry over something and started shouting at my mom while she was crying on the couch. This was something I had never done before, but I got in his face and yelled at him to leave. I showed him to the door and reminded him that my mom was dealing with something much bigger than whatever he was mad about before slamming the door behind him. Story 10. After dealing with my dad and his ex-girlfriend's endless screaming matches for a year, I had just about had it. One evening, the fighting started again and she asked me something to fuel her argument against my dad. I was trying to play a game and, my patience gone, I yelled, "I don't know and I don't care, and I'm tired of your fighting." It was the first time I'd ever raised my voice, and it apparently stunned them both into silence. She then walked out of the house, much to my relief. Story 11. As a teen, I was continuously caught in the middle of the intense shouting matches between my brother and stepdad. My mother would also join in on the heated arguments, trying to get them to calm down. But as I was on the brink of my final school exams, I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of my bedroom and into the living room, and I shouted at them, warning them that if I failed my exams, it would be their fault. I made it very clear that they had to either shut up or leave, as I was fed up with their constant fighting. Story 12. As I was saying goodbye to my boyfriend over the phone, I asked him if I could stop by to pick up the dress I'd left at his place. He told me that he had accidentally thrown it away. This, on top of his sudden change of heart after just 2 days of telling me things were okay between us, made me so angry that I completely lost it. I was livid and had never shouted so loudly in my life. Story 13. It was Halloween and I was sitting outside my house watching my sister take my 4-year-old niece trick-or-treating. Suddenly, the people living upstairs in our maisonette unleashed a firework towards them. I completely lost my temper, ushering them inside the house to make sure they were both safe. My sister had sustained some minor burns on her arm, but was able to shield my niece from the explosion. I was beyond furious, so I marched up to their door and started banging and demanding they come out. When they didn't answer, I even tried kicking the door in. Thankfully, my mom and brother managed to pull me away and back into the house to settle me down. Later, the police arrived due to a call from the neighbors. After explaining what had actually happened, I didn't end up in any trouble, and neither did they. Story 14. I was all set for a beautiful wedding ceremony in the church. The grand piano was front and center for the couple, and the organ was in the back for later use. But when I arrived, I was met with a shocking sight. The florist had placed a huge vase of roses on the grand piano with the string quartet's sheet music underneath to catch the dripping water. I was furious. The members of the quartet were equally incensed and quickly told the florist where he could put those roses as they frantically tried to save their drenched music scores. Story 15. This week, my worst nightmare came true. 2 pit bulls forced their way under my fence and set their sights on my beloved pup. I was filled with terror and helplessness, but in a moment of clarity, I managed to take action. I dialed 911, screaming for help and begging the police to arrive in time. I pounded on the window trying to scare the dogs away, but I had no idea how this would end. Fortunately, the police arrived in time and the pit bulls were put down. Miraculously, my pup survived and, although shaken, she's on the road to recovery. Once the situation had been contained, I apologized to the dispatcher for my frantic state.